Captain Lisa Davidson sat in the cold conference room of Meridian Prime Station and watched the Galactic Council decide the fate of humanity. The room was designed to intimidate. High ceilings stretched above, and the 7 council members sat on elevated platforms that looked down at the human delegation below. Light from distant stars filtered through the transparent walls, casting everything in a harsh blue glow. Lisa had been to this room 12 times in her career. Every time, the council found new ways to make humans feel small. The Vex Collective attack on the Andromeda Frontier had been going on for 3 weeks. Human settlements were burning. Families were dying. Commander Jack Harrison sat next to Lisa, his jaw tight with controlled anger. He had been the one to request urgent military support from the council. Lisa had been the one to hope they would listen. The Catherine representative spoke first. His voice was smooth and cold. He said that the human colonies were attacking Vex shipping routes. He said that the Vex Collective was defending itself. This was a lie. Everyone in the room knew it was a lie. The human settlements had been peaceful research outposts. The Vex attacks had come without warning. Ambassador Kevin Cole tried to argue the facts. He presented data, timelines, satellite images of the attacks. He showed recordings of human colonists calling for help. His voice stayed calm and reasonable. Lisa respected Kevin for that. It took strength to present truth to beings who did not care about truth. The Rothian Council member interrupted Kevin mid-sentence. She said the data could be forged. She said humans were known for deception. This was insulting, and Lisa knew it was deliberate. The council wanted to anger the human delegation. Angry people made mistakes. Lisa did not look at Jack. She knew he was close to standing up and telling the council what he really thought of them. She squeezed his hand under the table. Not now, she thought. Hold on. The 7 council members voted. The vote was immediate. 6 in favor of denying military aid to humanity. 1 abstained, which was the same as voting no. The message was clear. Humanity could die on the frontier, and the council would do nothing. Then came the second vote. A new proposal. The human colonial territory would be reduced by 40%. The planets and stations that humans had built, settled, and lived on for generations would be given to other species. This was punishment for failing to control the Vex Collective, they said. This was pressure on humanity to stop expanding, they said. Lisa knew what it really was. It was theft. Commander Harrison leaned forward. His voice was quiet but sharp. He asked how the council could legally seize human territory under galactic law. The answer came from the Zithian Empire representative, a thin being with silver skin and cold eyes. He said that the law allowed for administrative reorganization when a species proved unable to maintain order in its region. He smiled when he said this. The smile had teeth. Lisa felt something break inside her. Not her control. She still had that. But something else. Some part of her that had believed the Galactic Council existed to protect all species equally. Some part of her that had thought humans belonged here. That part died in the cold light of Meridian Prime Station. The council prepared to move to the next item on the agenda. A trade discussion that had nothing to do with humanity's survival. The Catherine representative was already speaking about new shipping routes. No one was looking at the human delegation anymore. They had been dismissed. Lisa stood up. The sudden movement made everyone look at her. She was tall for a human, and standing made her eye level with the council members on their elevated platforms. For the first time, the height difference seemed to matter less. She spoke clearly and without emotion. She said that Earth was withdrawing from the Galactic Council. She said that human space was closing its borders to council influence. She said that humanity would no longer seek help from beings that had already decided humanity deserved to die. The room went silent. The kind of silence that happens before earthquakes. The Catherine representative demanded to know if she had the authority to speak for all of humanity. Lisa did not hesitate. She said that on Earth, humans made decisions together. But she said that no human would accept council rule after today. She said that humans had survived harder things than the council could imagine. She said that Earth would survive, leaving two. Commander Harrison stood next. Then Kevin Cole. Then the three other human representatives. All of them stood together, facing down the council members above them. The message was unmistakable. One of the council members, Orothian, stood up and said this was rebellion. She said the council would respond with force. Lisa met her eyes and said that humans had learned to fight a long time ago. She said that Earth was ready for whatever came next. The council members argued with each other. Some wanted to respond immediately with military action. Others warned of the cost. The Zithian representative said to let the humans go. He said that humanity would fail without council protection. He said that when the Vex Collective destroyed the human colonies, the council could absorb the remaining humans as subjects. He was certain that humanity would beg to return. Lisa heard him say these things. She heard the confidence in his voice, the absolute certainty that humans were not capable of surviving alone. She walked out of the council chamber with her head high. The other humans followed. Behind them, the council members kept arguing, not realizing that something had changed forever. Not realizing that they had just pushed humanity into the stars to make its own way. Captain Lisa Davidson did not know if her decision would save humanity or doom it. She did not know if the colonies would stand behind her or if the council would crush them all. She only knew that staying would have been death anyway. A slow death, a death of being slowly erased and diminished and ignored until humanity was nothing but a fading memory in the council archives. Better to burn bright and free than fade away invisible. She thought. The doors of Meridian Prime closed behind her. On the other side of the galaxy, humans who did not know it yet were about to discover that they were on their own. And in that discovery, something extraordinary would begin to grow. The message spread through human space like fire through dry grass. Captain Lisa Davidson's Declaration of Independence reached Earth in 3 days, traveling through relay stations that humans had built themselves, not council property. The news reached Mayan colonies in the outer systems almost immediately. It reached trade ships moving between stars. It reached every human who had ever felt the weight of council restrictions. Every colonist who had been told no by distant bureaucrats. Every engineer who had been prevented from using innovative technology because the council called it dangerous. The reactions were mixed and immediate. In some colonies, people panicked. The leaders of New Singapore Station called emergency meetings. They feared that withdrawal from the council would bring military punishment. What if the council sent warships? What if trade routes were cut off? What if humanity was left isolated and starving? The station commander, a cautious man named Gregory Walsh, sent messages demanding that Earth reverse the decision. He said that the council would destroy them all, but in other places, something different happened. On Darwin Station, the colonists celebrated. They had been restricted by the council for 10 years, prevented from expanding their agricultural sector because the council said Earth was expanding too fast. They had watched their young people leave because there were no opportunities. Now, suddenly, they were free. The colony director, a woman named Margaret Cole, sent a message back to Earth. We stand with you. Let us show the galaxy what humanity can do. Back on Earth, President Morgan Hayes called an emergency session of the United Nations. The chamber filled with leaders from every nation on the planet. Some demanded that Hayes immediately apologize to the council and ask for readmission. They said the council made up a quarter of galactic trade. Without council access, Earth's economy would collapse. They said that isolation would mean poverty and suffering for billions of people. Others spoke differently. A delegate from the African Union said that humanity had survived without the Council before joining it. She said that Earth's strength had always come from human determination, not alien permissions. A representative from Southeast Asia pointed out that the Council had been using access as a tool of control. She said that true freedom meant accepting short-term hardship for long-term independence. The debate went on for hours. President Hayes listened to all of it. She was a careful politician, not a warrior. She had spent her career negotiating and building consensus. But she also understood something that the panic-filled delegates did not. The Council had already decided humanity's fate. The moment they refused military support for the frontier colonies, the moment they voted to seize human territory, they had made the break inevitable. Trying to apologize now would only mean begging for scraps while the Council tightened the noose. She made her decision. Earth would stand behind Davidson's declaration. The United Nations would coordinate with all human colonies to prepare for independence. Humanity would not go back. On a space station far from any Council authority, Commander Jack Harrison received a data packet that changed everything. It had come from a contact inside Vex Collective Communications, a being who had wanted to remain hidden until the moment was right. The packet contained recorded messages between Vex commanders and the Zithian Empire representative on the Council. The messages were explicit. The Vex Collective had been given permission to attack human settlements. More than permission. The Zithian Empire had encouraged it. They had hoped that the attacks would pull human military resources thin. They had planned for the Council to refuse aid, forcing humanity to either surrender territory or declare independence. If humanity surrendered, they would be weakened and controllable. If they declared independence, the Council would have reason to destroy them. It had been a trap all along. The Council members who voted against helping the frontier colonies had not been making an honest decision. They had been orchestrating a planned attack on humanity's future. The cruelty of it made Harrison's hands shake with anger. He sent the data to every human military station, every colony, every ship in human space. He added his own message. The Council attacked us. Now we defend ourselves. The evidence spread faster than the panic had. With proof of the Council's betrayal, the debate on Earth ended. The people united. Even those who had wanted to apologize to the Council could not defend beings who had planned to destroy them. A young officer named Sarah Park was stationed on a mining platform near the Vex frontier when the news arrived. She had joined the human military 5 years ago because she wanted to protect people. She had watched the Vex attacks destroy peaceful settlements. She had seen families scattered by war. She had waited for help that never came. Now, suddenly, she understood that the waiting had been part of the plan. The Council had let humans burn to make a point. Sarah read Harrison's message 3 times. Then she volunteered for combat operations. So did the other young soldiers on her platform. They were angry in a way that years of Council restrictions had never made them angry. This was different. This was not about regulations or politics. This was about survival. An engineer named Robert Grant worked on a station that had been building ships according to Council specifications for 15 years. The specifications were designed to make human ships slower than Council ships, less maneuverable, less powerful. Council officials said it was to prevent human military buildup. Everyone knew it was to keep humans dependent on Council protection. When the Independence Declaration came through, Grant immediately started pulling up old designs. Earth designs. Designs that humans had created before they joined the Council. He discovered that human engineers had been making small modifications to these designs in secret for years, slowly improving them while staying within Council rules. Some of them were quite advanced. Grant and his team started building. They worked without waiting for authorization. They used materials they had. They built faster, worked longer, pushed harder than they ever had. Within days, a new ship was under construction. It was not council approved. It was not council designed. It was human, built by humans for humanity. Word came down that President Hayes had released funding for military buildup. The restrictions were gone. The council regulations no longer mattered. Human engineers, who had spent careers working within impossible limits, suddenly had freedom to innovate. Across human space, something was happening that the council had never expected. The withdrawal was not creating panic and despair. It was creating focus and determination. Humans began sharing resources. Colonies that had been competing for council recognition now helped each other. Military officers who had been following council orders began making their own strategic decisions. All of it was uncoordinated at first. But slowly, under the guidance of President Hayes, Captain Davidson, and Commander Harrison, human civilization began to organize itself for survival. Scientists worked on new technologies. Soldiers trained for combat. Politicians prepared for diplomatic approaches to other species. Ordinary people understood that the soft, comfortable time of council protection was over. They also understood something else. They were finally free to be what humans had always been. Not subjects asking permission. Not subjects hoping for approval. But creators, fighters, thinkers, and builders. Free people making their own choices about their own future. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 days after Captain Davidson walked out of their chambers. The members were angry. The Kethran representative banged his hand on the council table and demanded immediate military action against humanity. The Rothian member called for a total blockade. The Zithian Empire representative, the one who had planned the entire trap, spoke with cold confidence. He said that humanity would surrender within weeks. He said that cutting off trade would starve the human colonies. He said that the Vex Collective would finish the job that the Council had started. But the Council discovered that things were more complicated than they expected. Some Council members wanted to negotiate with humanity. The trade relationships were valuable. The Kelther species, which produced technology that humans had been buying, worried about losing that market. A war with humanity would disrupt their profits. The Council voted to enact an economic embargo. They would cut off all trade with human space. They would restrict access to Council technology. They would tell every species under Council influence to refuse trade with humans. The Council believed this would work. They believed that human technology was inferior and that humans would beg for readmission within. Months stopped. What the Council did not understand was that humans had already started adapting. Captain Lisa Davidson was coordinating with dozens of independent stations that existed outside of Council authority. These were small places, mostly asteroid mining operations run by aliens who had left Council service, research stations on abandoned worlds, trading posts on the edges of explored space. None of them had power individually, but together they made a network. And humans began trading with them immediately. A trader named Kix represented a species called the Tremel, beings who had been subjugated by the Council for 300 years. Kix had grown tired of Council control. When the humans declared independence, Kix saw an opportunity. He contacted Commander Harrison secretly and offered to become humanity's trading partner. More than that, he offered intelligence. Kix told Harrison that the Council was planning military operations across 3 sectors. He provided data on Council fleet movements. He explained which Council members were pushing for aggressive action and which ones wanted to negotiate. The information was invaluable. With this knowledge, Captain Davidson could plan defensive positions. She could predict where attacks would come. She could prepare her fleet. The Council had made a mistake. They had assumed that their control was absolute, that no one would dare help humanity. But Kix was not the only one willing to help. A scientist from the Kether species named Trowel agreed to share technology that had been banned from human use. Trowel was old and cared little for council restrictions. He had friends among human researchers. He believed that the council was corrupt. He believed that humanity deserved the chance to develop freely. The technology that Trowel shared was revolutionary. It allowed humans to improve their weapon systems significantly. It gave them new manufacturing capabilities. It showed them how to repair council technology without council authorization. Within weeks, human engineers using Trowel's information had upgraded half of their warships. The council also made a second mistake. They authorized the Vex Collective to attack human colonies openly, without restriction. The Vex were told to crush humanity. The council believed this would be easy. The Vex had superior numbers and council backing, but humans had learned to fight in the harshest environment in known space. Earth was a death world. Its gravity was heavy. Its weather was violent. Its creatures were predatory. Humans had evolved to survive things that would kill most species. The Vex had never faced anything like this. When the Vex attacked a human mining colony named Hope Station, the defense was fierce and coordinated. Lieutenant Sarah Park led the defense team. She had studied Vex tactics for months. She knew their patterns. She knew their weaknesses. She understood that Vex soldiers followed orders rigidly and did not adapt well to surprises. She used this against them. The Vex expected the mining colony to break quickly. Instead, the humans fought room by room, corridor by corridor. Every human fighter had spent weeks training in close combat. They understood how to use the station's layout to their advantage. The Vex, fighting in unfamiliar territory against beings who refused to surrender, found themselves in a nightmare scenario. After 6 hours of combat, the Vex commander requested support. The council sent reinforcements. After 12 hours, the Vex were still fighting. The reinforcements added to the chaos and confusion. Humans were using the same psychological pressure that had always worked against them, but in reverse. The Vex began making mistakes. They began getting in each other's way. They began losing focus. After 24 hours, the Vex withdrew. They had lost a full assault team, including 12 soldiers. Hope Station had lost people too. But they had won. The mining colony had survived against impossible odds. Engineer Robert Grant was constructing the first completely human-designed warship in a hidden facility on an asteroid. The ship was not as large as Council vessels. It was not as heavily armored, but it was faster and more maneuverable than anything the Vex flew. And it had been built with the knowledge that humans would be flying. Grant incorporated designs that accounted for human strengths. Smaller controls that human hands could use efficiently. Command stations that human eyes could see from effectively. Weapon systems that human minds understood intuitively. It was the first ship in the galaxy designed by one species, specifically for another species to fly. When the ship was launched, Captain Davidson herself took command. The ship was fast. It was responsive. It felt like an extension of her body in a way that Council ships never did. She took it out on patrol near the Vex frontier. A Council surveillance unit detected the new ship. The report went back to the Zithian Empire representative. He studied the design and understood what it meant. Humans were not trying to copy Council technology. They were creating their own. They were not trying to be Council members. They were trying to be independent. The representative realized that his assumption had been wrong. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would fight. And if humans could inspire other species to rebel, the Council could fracture entirely. He recommended to the Council that they mount a full military campaign against humanity immediately. The campaign would be expensive. It would require resources from multiple species. but it would eliminate the threat before it grew too large. The council voted to approve the campaign. The decision was made. Total war against humanity would begin in 1 week, but the council did not know that Kix had informants in every council chamber. The information about the coming attack was in human hands within hours. Captain Davidson received the message and began preparing for the largest military conflict humanity had ever faced. The free humans of Earth and its colonies would not be destroyed by the council. They would be tested beyond anything they had imagined. But they would be tested as free beings, making their own choices, defending their own future. And that made all the difference. The war began at dawn on 3 different human worlds simultaneously. The Galactic Council did not wait for diplomacy or warnings. They came with weapons and fire. On the colony world of Kepler Station, the attack came from the north. On Mars, it came from orbital positions that the Council had been building in secret. On Nova Haven, it came from the Vex Collective's largest assault fleet ever assembled. Captain Lisa Davidson commanded from the bridge of the new human warship, now named the Independence. She had positioned her fleet in the spaces between the Council attack points. The strategy was risky. It meant spreading human forces thin, but it was the only way to defend all the colonies at once. If she concentrated her forces in one area, the Council would destroy the others. The first battle came at 0400 hours, when Council fighters attacked a human mining platform near the Kepler asteroid field. The platform had only light defenses. It was not meant to fight. It was meant to mine valuable minerals. The Council attack destroyed the defensive grid in the first wave. The platform's commander, a man named David Harrison, ordered an evacuation. Most people got to the escape pods. Some did not. 700 people died when the platform was hit by a Council missile dot. The news reached Captain Davidson while she was engaging Council battleships near Mars. The report came through with the sounds of death still playing in the background. A woman's voice calling for help. A child crying. Then silence. Davidson did not allow herself to feel it. She could not. She had to fight. The Council had brought 3 battleships and multiple smaller attack vessels. Human forces had less firepower. Human ships were smaller, but humans had advantages that the Council did not expect. Human pilots took risks that Council pilots would not. They flew their ships into spaces where Council ships could not follow. They used the gravity of planets and asteroids to gain speed. They improvised tactics that the Council did not anticipate. The first Council battleship was damaged by a coordinated human attack. The captain of a human assault ship named the Griffin rammed into the Council vessel's propulsion system, then ejected before the collision. The impact did not destroy the battleship, but it crippled it. A Council engineer told me later that the human pilot had sacrificed himself to save a colony. But the pilot, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, did not die. He ejected successfully into space. A rescue ship picked him up 3 hours later. But thousands of others did not survive the attacks. On Nova Haven, the situation was worse. The Vex brought overwhelming numbers. They had been preparing for this assault for months. The colony had 5 million people. When the attack came, President Morgan Hayes authorized a full evacuation. But evacuation takes time. Ships had to be filled. Children had to be gathered. Elderly people had to be transported. The Vex did not wait. The first orbital bombardment killed 200,000 people instantly. The ground shook. Buildings collapsed. The sky filled with smoke. Lieutenant Sarah Park was in the Planetary Defense Command Center when the bombardment started. She made a decision that would change the course of the war. She ordered the activation of a hidden weapons system that Commander Jack Harrison had ordered, built months earlier. The system had cost enormous resources to create. It was not finished. It had never been tested on an actual target. But it existed, and it was the only weapon humanity had that could reach the Vex orbital position. Sarah authorized the launch. The weapon was based on an old Earth design called a kinetic strike. It was essentially a large projectile accelerated to extreme velocity. No explosives. No council technology. Just physics. The projectile was aimed at the Vex command ship. The projectile traveled at a speed that made council weapons look slow. It was moving so fast that it created a trail of plasma in the atmosphere. The Vex targeting system could not lock onto it. The Vex defense systems could not calculate an intercept trajectory fast enough. The projectile struck the command ship directly. The impact was catastrophic. The Vex ship broke apart. The shock waves spread outward. Secondary explosions followed. The Vex fleet, suddenly without command, became disorganized. In the chaos, 2 more Vex assault ships were damaged by human defensive fire. The attack on Nova Haven slowed. It did not stop, but it slowed enough for more people to evacuate. But the victory came with a cost. After firing the kinetic weapon, that particular defense system was useless. It could not be reloaded quickly. The Vex would adapt and plan accordingly. And throughout human space, the Council's attacks intensified. Mining colonies fell. Research stations were destroyed. A human settlement on Tau Ceti Alpha was bombarded so heavily that nothing of value remained. The commander of that colony, a woman named Jennifer Cross, died leading the evacuation of children. She made sure that every child got to the evacuation ships. She was the last person on the ground when the final bombardment came. She died so that 2,000 children would live. Commander Jack Harrison discovered something that changed the war. The Council was using a centralized communication system to coordinate attacks across all sectors. The system relied on relay stations positioned throughout space. These relay stations were Council property, built by Council engineers, designed by Council architects. Harrison understood something important. Council engineers designed for strength and permanence. They did not design for war or adaptation. The relay stations were heavily armored, but their interior systems were not protected against sabotage. If the systems could be destroyed from the inside, the Council would lose the ability to coordinate attacks. He proposed a desperate plan. A small team would infiltrate a relay station. The team would plant explosives on the communications core. They would destroy the station from inside. The team would need to escape before the explosives detonated. The odds of success were not good. Sarah Park volunteered to lead the team. She had become a soldier for a reason. She believed in protecting people. She had seen enough death. If destroying a relay station would reduce the Council's ability to attack colonies, then she would do it. The mission was risky in ways that could not be fully planned. The team had to dock at the station without being detected. They had to find the communications core. They had to plant explosives designed by human engineers, not Council weapons. They had to escape. They succeeded. The relay station was destroyed. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. For a brief moment, the Council's communication network failed completely. In that moment, 3 human fleets coordinated a massive counterattack. They destroyed 2 Council supply ships and damaged a battleship. But then the Council adapted. They restored their communications through backup systems. They increased security on the remaining relay stations. They launched new attacks with even greater intensity. The war continued and intensified. Throughout human space, people were dying. Colonies were burning. The Vex and Council forces were relentless. But humanity did not surrender. It had nowhere to surrender to. It had burned the bridges to the Council. There was only survival or death. President Morgan Hayes made a broadcast to all of humanity. She spoke from a bunker deep beneath the Earth's surface. She said that the war was hard. She said that many people would die. She said that the Council expected humanity to break. She said that the Council was wrong. She asked every human to contribute to the war effort. Miners worked extra shifts to produce supplies. Scientists worked without sleep to develop new weapons. Families gave their young people to the military. Ordinary people became soldiers because the alternative was extinction. And in the darkness of space, stars burned with the fire of human warships fighting and dying. But they did not burn alone. They burned with defiance. They burned with the determination of a species fighting for its freedom. And that burning light spread across the galaxy, visible to species that the Council had thought were conquered forever. The war changed after 8 months of fighting. It was not one single moment of victory. It was the accumulation of small victories, hard-won battles, and human refusal to break. Colonies that should have fallen held on. Ships that should have been destroyed fought on. Soldiers who should have given up kept fighting. The first turning point came when the Tremel species openly joined humanity's side. Traitor Kix brought more than intelligence. He brought a fleet. It was not large, but it was enough. When Vex collective forces attacked a human colony near Tremel territory, the Tremel fleet intercepted them. The message was clear. Humanity was not alone anymore. Other species began to follow. The Kelthar, tired of Council restrictions on trade, began secretly selling military supplies to human forces. The Sari, a warrior species that had been subjugated by the Council for generations, sent a delegation to Earth. They came with an offer. They would fight alongside humanity. The Sari wanted freedom as much as humans did. With these new allies, the balance of power shifted. The Council suddenly faced opposition on multiple fronts. The Vex Collective, fighting a prolonged war that they were not winning, began to question their commitment. The Council was paying them less than the war cost. The Vex had accepted Council service because it was profitable. This war was becoming expensive. 6 months into the war, a Vex commander named Cole made a decision. His fleet had been fighting near the human frontier for weeks. His ships were damaged. His soldiers were tired. He was ordered to attack a human colony that was defended by both human and Sori fighters. The battle would be costly. The chance of victory was uncertain. Cole refused the order. He said that the Council had sent him to fight a war that the Council could not win. He said that the Vex were not Council slaves. He led his remaining fleet away from Council territory and established himself as an independent faction. He never attacked human space again. When other Vex commanders heard about Cole's rebellion, some followed. The Vex Collective fractured. By the end of the war's first year, the Council could no longer rely on Vex forces. The military situation shifted dramatically. Captain Lisa Davidson's human fleet, reinforced with Tremel, Sori, and even some Kelthar military vessels, began to push back against Council forces. They reclaimed human colonies that had been captured. They destroyed Council military installations. They proved that humanity was not going to be conquered. The Council convened an emergency meeting. The members argued viciously with each other. The Kethran representative wanted to negotiate peace. The Rothian wanted to escalate the war. The Zithian representative, who had planned the original trap, suggested abandoning the war and letting humanity collapse from internal division. But none of these options worked anymore. The Council's problem was that they had underestimated humanity from the beginning. They had believed that humans were weak. They had believed that humans were dependent on Council technology. They had believed that cutting off trade would destroy human civilization. All of these beliefs were wrong. Humans had survived by building their own technology. Humans had survived by forming alliances with other species that also wanted freedom. Humans had survived because they refused to accept that they should be ruled by beings who treated them as inferior. Commander Jack Harrison was the one who proposed the final military operation. He had noticed that the Council's defensive network had weaknesses. The relay stations had been hardened after Sarah Park's earlier sabotage. But the main Council headquarters on Meridian Prime was defended by orbital stations that were old and not designed for current warfare. The operation would be dangerous. It would require a coordinated attack by human, Sauri, and Tremel forces. It would put capital ships at risk. It would be the largest battle of the entire war, but Harrison believed it would work. He believed that if they could breach the Council's defenses and force them to negotiate directly, the war would change. The Council had been fighting from a distance, secure in Meridian Prime's protected position. If they had to face the reality of their own vulnerability, they might finally accept that they could not win. Captain Davidson studied the plan. She checked the calculations. She consulted with Sauri commanders and Tremel strategists. Everyone agreed that the plan was dangerous, but viable. They had endured a year of war. They had lost millions of people, but they were still fighting. The Council was beginning to fracture. The assault on Meridian Prime began with a massive strike by human carrier ships. The human fighters were flown by pilots who had learned to fly better than Council pilots. The human ships were faster and more aggressive. They broke through the first defensive line and damaged 2 orbital stations. The Sauri sent their warships through a gap in the defenses. They did not fight like Council forces. They fought with cunning and savagery. They took risks that confused Council commanders who were used to predictable tactics. They destroyed a battleship that had been Council property for 3 centuries. The Tremel attacked from an unexpected angle, approaching from deep space where the Council had placed fewer defenses. By the time the Council realized what was happening, Tremel ships were already moving toward the headquarters. The battle lasted 18 hours. Council defenses were strong. The orbital stations fought hard, but they had never been designed to face the kind of coordinated assault that was hitting them. The Council had expected to defend against isolated attacks. They had not expected to fight a war where multiple species attacked simultaneously from multiple directions. When human boarding teams breached the main Council chambers, they found the Council members attempting to flee. Captain Davidson herself led the team. She confronted the Zithian representative, the being who had planned humanity's destruction. The representative tried to intimidate her. He said that the Council was eternal, that the war meant nothing, that humans were still barbaric beings who would eventually be controlled. Lisa responded simply. She said that humanity was free now. That freedom was more valuable than all the Council's power. That the beings who had treated humans as expendable had now learned what humans were truly capable of. The Council surrendered 3 hours later. The members were taken into custody. The war was over, but the work of peace had just begun. The treaty that followed was negotiated over months. Humans demanded recognition as equals in any future galactic organization. The Council initially refused. They could not accept that beings they had dismissed as inferior had actually defeated them. But the treaty was not negotiated between the Council and humanity. It was negotiated between free species who had decided to create something new. The Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, the Species Assembly was created. Every species had equal representation, regardless of size or age. Every species had 1 vote. The Assembly could not impose restrictions on any member species. All decisions required consensus. Power was distributed equally. Humanity's seat at the Assembly was taken by President Morgan Hayes, who had held Earth together through the war. Commander Jack Harrison was appointed as the military coordinator for the Assembly's defense forces. Captain Lisa Davidson returned to Earth as a hero. But more importantly, she returned as a symbol of what humanity had accomplished. The cost of the war was staggering. 3 billion humans had died. Entire colonies had been destroyed. The pain of those losses would never fully heal. But from those losses came something precious. Humanity had proven that it was not meant to be controlled. It had proven that humans would not accept subjugation. It had proven that freedom was worth fighting for. A memorial was built on Earth, listing the names of every human who had died in the war. Sarah Park's name was on that memorial. She had died on the relay station mission, caught in the explosion she had created. But her sacrifice was not forgotten. Humans named a colony after her. Children studied her courage. The Sauri, who had fought alongside her, declared that Sarah Park's bravery was legendary, even by their standards. On Kepler Station, the mining colony that had suffered the first attacks, humans began rebuilding. They built better defenses. They built faster ships. They built a society that remembered what it had cost to be free. When humans looked at the stars now, they did not see masters. They did not see restrictions. They saw possibilities. They saw allies. They saw a future that they would shape themselves. The day humans cut ties with the Galactic Council had been the day the galaxy changed forever. The Council had believed that controlling humanity would make them stronger. Instead, they had created something far more formidable. They had created a free people who would never accept subjugation again. And in the darkness of space, humanity built new stations, new ships, new alliances. The stars burned not with the fire of war, but with the light of a civilization discovering its own power.